How does our work from home policy impact our members and clients?
An engaged team member is more likely to pay attention to what we need to do to make the customers happy. Our team members being more engaged and being more productive is going to allow us to provide greater products and services for our customers.
Work from home mandate, remote work. These phrases have become commonplace with the onset of COVID-19. Organizations have had to make significant adjustments to keep their businesses running. Here at the VM Group, in order to ensure that our team members continually operate at the highest level of productivity, we started the discussion about remote work long before COVID-19. Stay with me for this edition of Chatting with Courtney as I speak about remote work with Group Chief HR Officer, Dr. Dayton Robinson, and how remote work will ultimately benefit you, our members and clients. I'm Courtney Campbell. Chatting with me today about the implications of the work from home model is Dr. Dayton Robinson, Group Chief Human Resources Officer. Welcome, Dayton.
Thank you, Sir Courtney.
So long before COVID-19, the VM Group developed and published a work from home policy. What was the thinking behind that?
Okay, so as part of our employer of choice objective and our Great Place to Work initiative, in 2018, we took a decision that we were going to use progressive HR initiatives to drive engagement, one. And of course, you know that engagement leads to greater productivity. And from greater productivity would come bigger revenues. And so not just the work from home, but remote and flexible work arrangement is what we would have implemented. And that's just one of the many initiatives that we would have put in place then to drive those two particular objectives that I mentioned earlier. So it's safe to say we were aligning what we do with data and using data to drive whatever we do to get there, which is why you could safely say that we're ahead of the curve.
Great. So with the advent of COVID-19, in addition to the policy, what else did we have to do to adjust to ensure that productivity remained high?
All right, so, the first thing we had to do was to ensure that we had the resources in place to support that kind of initiative. And one of our cultural beliefs is together we're a winner, yes. Right? And of course, our IT department was quick to get in place the Office 365 that would support that kind of seamless transition to do what we wanted to do. But the second most important thing I believe we had to do was to change our mindset, the way we see work, and to focus more on results rather than activity. Our culture program kind of drive us to focus on a drive for results. Yeah. So that was what we were really focused on. What else can we do to get the results? So I said a change in the thinking of our leaders, supported by, putting the resources that we need in place to support such a drive.
Great. So how have we been able to ensure a healthy work life, even as people cope with balancing the virtual workspace with the home and office now in one space?
Right. I mean, very interesting question, a very good question. Many of us right across the globe in the HR fraternity is asking the same question, how can we do that better? I think everything rise and fall with leadership. And I think having the leaders accept that we are now operating in a VUCA environment where things can change quickly and we have to be more agile in our thinking is a starting place. And once we have understand that kind of thinking, then the need to put all our engagement activities in a virtual space that can support this kind of thing becomes so much easier because we are listening to our team members more. We're acting on the feedback even more. That is becoming part of how we lead as a people. We even measure how well we're doing this transformational thing in our HREI. So we're listening more, we're giving feedback, we're taking the feedback and we're acting on that. So that's one aspect. And we're moving things on the virtual space, the second aspect. You can't just look at the team member from the standpoint of work productivity, but also from how you're dealing with your family,
Right.
how you're coping at home, how your children functioning, and look at the person in a holistic way. I think we have done an excellent job in trying to do that through our committees. But also, again, going back to the first point that I made, we're always listening to our tours, the tours that you have, the HR tours.
That's right.
As well as the virtual town hall meetings. Would have taken the feedback from those team members and we would use that and formulate that into the decision-making process. And that goes back to how we support the team members to adjust mentally and their whole total well-being.
And we have also coached their managers,
Absolutely.
their leaders on how to help them through this period, right?
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
Great. It is now 15 months since the first case of COVID-19 was reported in Jamaica. What do you think is the biggest impact that this pandemic has had on the workplace locally?
Well, that's another excellent question. The first thing is that the way we define the workplace pre-COVID, we can't define it that way anymore.
That's right.
So the definition of workplace
beyond walls
has changed.
Yes.
I think that's the biggest impact. Not only the definition of workplace has changed, the definition of workforce has also changed, right? Pre-COVID, persons believe that, you must work at your substantive place of work, that your workforce was limited to those who can come in and work. What HR practitioners are now finding out is that we can now hire people from anywhere across the world as long as they have the skill set to do what you need to do and you can engage them virtually.
Absolutely.
Currently, we have persons working remotely who we have never ever met in person.
True.
Right here at VM, right? So the biggest takeaway is that. The second...
and by the way, and you can measure what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Right.
And because again, it goes right back to objective setting and how smart that is.
Mm-hmm.
And probably a little later we could talk about that, but that's very important. The second biggest thing I believe a lot of executives would have recognized, not just locally now, but internationally as well. You'd have been familiar with the McKinsey report. You'd have seen now that executives, even some of whom previously thought that a remote kind of setting would be less productive, are now saying, hey, we're getting more productivity and seeing greater returns. We're not going back.
Dayton, are there any other changes initiated by the pandemic that you expect to become permanent fixtures of the new workplace?
Yes, I think there are two things. One of them I alluded to earlier. The whole matter of remote and flexible work arrangements is going to be a permanent space. But it's a hybrid model. Right. What I want persons to understand, or team members to understand that, this all depends on how productive our team is. Some persons are more productive at home, some persons are more productive at work, some persons are more productive with a combination of both things, which is why it's called hybrid. So we want to create a space where there's flexibility, where our team members can be most productive. So hybrid is here to stay. The other thing is,
No, go ahead.
The other thing is the whole creation of smarter spaces.
That's right.
Right, where you don't have a permanent office space at work, Sir Courtney, but you can work from home, and if you need to come to work, you book into your space, just as you'd book on the Knutsford, right? And you come, you do your work, you deliver your results, more and over and beyond what you have committed to, and you go back home. And that's the flexibility, particularly with the Generation X and the Generation Z that makes up 60% of the workforce now, is looking for.
So that requires some adjustments on the part of the leaders because of these changing needs and expectations of their team members. So are there any other adjustments that the leaders would have to make?
So for the leaders, what I would say, the first thing that ought to have happened, and this is what the pandemic has brought out as well, Sir Courtney, which is why it's good, is that it now forces us as the leaders to set smarter objectives. Okay. Objectives that are measurable. But not only that, it also forces us to speak and listen more, right? And to focus on results rather than activities, right? That was there before even COVID. But now that persons are working remotely, it forces us to zero in a little bit more on those objectives.
Sharper focus.
Sharper focus on the objectives. Making sure that they're measurable, but not just they are measurable, but having some agreement with your team now, more dialogue, more agreement with your team now as to how these are going to be measured, what is expected of you as a team member, what time I'm going to get these results, right? It also put the leader in a position now where they have to be focused on clearing more roadblocks and facilitating as leaders, rather than before where they dabble in the weeds. We all dabble in the weeds more than we ought to, right? So it's a change in the thinking. Our leaders now are required to be agile, change the way we think, we operate, how we see work.
Great. Dayton, tell us, are there some unresolved challenges of this new model that Jamaican businesses will have to address and address urgently?
Let's be totally transparent with that. Yes, there are, and we could actually lead in that because the world is actually struggling with these two things that I'm about to mention. But because the lines are now so blurred, what we were previously accustomed to as a workplace has changed totally. Now your home can be a workplace. And so now the question is now asked, and we haven't resolved it yet, how far can you go with occupational health and safety as it regards to monitoring the workplace? That blurred line between privacy of your home and your obligation under your workplace becomes very, very blurred, right? And so that's something that is unresolved and we need to look at.
What's the responsibility of the employer when the employee is working from their home?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
right?
Very interesting.
And so on. And the other point is seeing that we're coming out of a pandemic where, this is a virus or a disease that impacts, and is highly contagious and impacts everybody. The question now that's been asked by many leaders across the world, should we be mandating vaccination at work for team members who are coming in contact with other team members or customers? So the idea of mandatory vaccination is still a big question out there, and I don't think there is a agreed to consensus on where that is concerned.
Yes, I've heard lots of vigorous debate about that one.
Absolutely.
Will local universities need to adjust their curricula to better prepare their students for the new workplace?
Right, but in sympathy for the universities, what I'll do say is that our local businesses have to be a little bit more forceful in creating that research culture. If we don't do that and collaborate better with the universities, then the universities are going to act and change the way they teach based on gut feelings and what they read in the newspaper. Right? What needs to happen is a greater partnership, probably even driven by businesses in collaboration with the universities to put out their facts, right? And stories, right? And help them with their research papers so that when they're teaching, they can teach in a way that team members can come out and think on the bridge of theory and practice. And that will help us. If we allow the university to use their own accord to come up with these things, what will actually happen is that team or employees will graduate from the university, then it becomes our problem, right? And it will be a culture shock for them. And so greater partnership, I believe, even to be initiated by the end users who are, the businesses, with universities need to take place so that we can change the way we teach, so that people can be more cognizant of what's happening in the workplace. The end result is you're going to have people coming into the workplace who are more agile, who are more open in their thinking, have a very good idea of what is expected of them, and can balance theory and practice.
So you're calling for a much stronger partnership
Absolutely.
Between academia and industry.
Absolutely.
Working together for the benefit of the nation and the region, because the items we're raising now are also applicable in other Caribbean markets, aren't they?
Definitely.
Great.
Definitely.
So what do current members of the workforce need to do to prepare for any impending changes in the workplace?
All right. So I know oftentimes our team members, will rely on leaders to give them direction, and that's fine. But they too have a responsibility to be cognizant of what's happening in the industry in which they operate, which is one. Understanding of what's happening in the field that they operate in, which is two, right? To be best in class at all times. And the responsibility for their own development, they should take that more seriously, right? And so, with that kind of change in the thinking, the same way I said earlier that the leaders need to change the way they think, the team members too need to change the way they think, right? And so with a change in thinking from the team members and a change in thinking from the leadership, then we can adequately prepare them for what is to come so that they can pivot into the new work space, pivot into the new jobs that are on the horizon. Because whereas now people might see this as, some person might see this as doom and gloom, whereas VM see it as great opportunities down the tube to come. And so, as opposed to worry about what is to come, we want to get our team members to be thinking that way so we can prepare them for what is to come and to get them into those new roles.
And do you think our VM team members will be ready?
Absolutely. I think they're ready. I mean, sometimes I think they were born ready.
I agree with you. Yes. And then finally, Dayton, let's talk about our important stakeholders, our members and clients. How does our work from home policy impact our members and clients?
Right. So when we started doing this and when that mandate came to us from our president and CEO, by the way, that would be you, sir, about that. Right? Yes. It's on the basis that we are going to improve engagement, improve productivity. An engaged team member is more likely to pay attention to what we need to do to make the customers happy. All of what we're doing here is on the background that our team members will provide greater and better support in terms of producing the products and services that we need to make our members happy. And not only that, but to execute on the purpose that we would have quite eloquently placed in our mission and vision, right? So at the end of the day, our team members being more engaged and being more productive is going to allow us to provide greater products and services for our customers.
Thank you, Dayton, for sharing your insights on this very important issue. I enjoyed our chat.
Yeah. Thank you, Sir Courtney, and the pleasure is mine.
And thank you, everyone, for staying with us. Until next time, stay safe.